if you're Ras Baraka, and even more so, Steve Fulop,
Yeah.
you should be embarrassed.
Mikie Sherrill is so milquetoast.
Even mild pushback, she does not respond well
She
to
kind of
that.
closes up on it.
If you're Jack Ciattarelli, you have to be very excited. If Jack Ciattarelli does not win,
Right.
he will go down as the biggest failure, biggest
you are not
choke
kidding.
artist
You are not kidding.
in New Jersey GOP history. Justin,
Yeah.
primaries. We meant to do this earlier, but the New
We
Jersey
did, but-
gubernatorial primaries are now over. We know who the two candidates are. We were right.
Yeah. The only thing I can say, I'm surprised at how fast it was called.
Oh my! It was like 45 minutes, and both races were called.
It was wild.
I'm like,
Wild.
I think it might have been like 15 minutes, and they called it for Jack Ciattarelli.
Well, Ciattarelli was incredibly fast.
Well, it's also at the same time, too, as soon as I saw that, I was like, that makes sense, because he was leading in every poll by a lot.
I was not necessarily surprised by the call on the Republican side. That absolutely made sense to me. Not that Mikie was a surprise in any way, shape, or form, but like that was awesome. That was like 45 minutes in, something like that. And at that time, the amount of reporting was also incredibly low. But I mean, I guess you can understand. But like, called incredibly quick.
The one thing that threw me off more than anything, though, is that how quick it was for the Democrats, because it was there were 6 candidates. Sean Spiller did a lot better than I thought he was, despite the fact that he had absolutely no presence at the last 2 debates.
No.
He made no money. He even won a county in South Jersey. I think he won Cumberland or something.
I think it was
like that.
Cumberland. It was incredibly surprising. Like, I thought Spiller didn't really have much to offer other than his budget on advertising.
Yeah. Well, it's also, too, the thing I learned about his budget, it was all based on union money. So he didn't make a lot of money, but since he was so tied with the unions, they were practically paying for his campaign. Which is, it's great if you can get that to work for you, but he didn't really get it to work for him.
No.
So my thesis, because like we're a little late to the dance, so it's kind of it doesn't make a whole lot of sense to break down like all this, that, and the other thing.
No.
There were a few key points that I wanted to make about this race, and the first one is if you're Ras Baraka, and even more so Steve Fulop, you should be embarrassed by the results of this.
I agree. Mikie Sherrill is so milquetoast. Like, literally, and like, I know it's something that's very easy to say, but she is like the most bland mainline. Nothing to show one way or another. I think this makes contention into the governor race itself kind of interesting.
Yeah, because Ras Baraka, up until like very late into the actual results coming in, he was trailing in Essex, and he was trailing like he was winning Union for a little bit.
For a little bit,
But then
there's nothing really to talk about, though.
Towards the end, he won both the counties.
Yes.
So at least he can hold his head up high. I won 2 counties, but you should still be embarrassed because your presence in other counties, like you have to win the whole state.
Right.
And he couldn't do any of that. Like he won those 2 counties, Mayor Newark, fine, great. But like he was miserable in some other counties.
Yeah.
He did a terrible job in terms of his placement in like, what was it, Warren?
Warren, almost might as well have not have been in the race.
Yes. And like his effectiveness in South Jersey was like, he was like in the bottom. Bottom 2 or 3 in some of those counties. It wasn't, and you could say, well, he's the mayor of Newark. What kind of presence will he have in South Jersey? But that was kind of like the
still.
But that's also the point that we were kind of like saying. It's like, well, how will South Jersey connect with Ras Baraka? Even Democrats, how are they going to connect with him? And that's why I think he had a sort of an embarrassing showing, because if he was. It's him and Fulop that had the best shot to beat Mikie Sherrill, honestly. If you went by like the county conventions, then sure, fine. Then that's Steve Sweeney.
Right.
But at the same time, like Steve Sweeney had he had the opposite problem that Ras Baraka had, which is like, how are you going to win any North Jersey counties? Or like they changed the formula of how it's done. It wasn't necessarily county based.
Right.
But like it's the easiest way to deliver the information.
Exactly.
It's just like
yes.
Won this county, won that county, but like for the most part, Steve Sweeney, didn't even do like when the counties that he was supposed to win. Like he lost. He lost. He was never going to win Ocean County. But
no, never. But
he lost. I know he lost like Cumberland. I think he lost another South Jersey county. Which when you look at that, it's like you're supposed to sweep that practically. Right. You're a staple.
It was very interesting. So like in Ocean County, where like I live and work. At least from outward advertising and local support, the one that I saw the most, I saw nothing for Ras. Fulop in the latter time of everything leading up to it, Fulop a little bit. Like Sherrill, barely really anything. Yeah. Well, it is Ocean County, but like it's very interesting to me. Incredibly interesting because, like, Mikie Sherrill, she's like, there's nothing really there. So was she the safe pick that a lot of like, because I know like with any party, like Republicans are fairly split a lot of time, and Democrats are fairly split. Like older Democrats, different types of Democrats. Like of people, younger people I know, they're at least what I heard, looking at like Ras and stuff like that. But. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know the actual numbers for Ocean County itself, but
I know it was won very handily.
Yeah,
on the GOP side by Jack Ciattarelli. He won every county. By a lot.
Yeah,
like I think it was only was in Bergen. Bergen, I think, in the Democrat side. I think maybe that was the one county that got in Heimer. I'm trying to pull up the map that I was going by, but like. For the Republican side, it was just a clean sweep.
Yeah.
Won every single county. Almost none of them were like, I think the closest one was Warren, and it was like a 10-point difference. It might have been Mercer, actually.
Oh, I think it was Mercer.
And so that was never a race. And also at the same time, to a degree, if you're Bill Spadea, you should also be embarrassed. But that's because you put up like no fight. You put up no fight in that race. And also it was that was a kind of a hard battle to do. Like, he came in there as the underdog. Ciattarelli had already run in 2017. He'd lost in the primary.
Yes,
he ran in 2021. He lost.
Ciattarelli was a known quantity.
Yeah. And so you were just running from behind in terms of trying to like compete with Ciattarelli. But you were the closest guy, and you were not close in pretty much any county. And in some counties, Bramnick had leaped over you.
Still is wild
to me. Instead of Bramnick.
I know a lot of people because I do know, like, I am around a lot of people that are fringe across the board.
Yeah.
And a lot of the people that are like Republican fringe that I know and associate with were like real big on Spadea. But like I said, there is a certain attraction to that type of personality. I don't knock him for it, but I don't like whatever. I don't like the cult of personality types.
Like his whole thing, and we talked about that in the last one, where he kind of just like dimed himself out by saying he would only serve one term.
Yes.
I cut that as a little clip, and some people are like, well, he wanted open borders. It's like, well, here's the problem, or amnesty. He wanted amnesty. And the issue with that is like, well, because I watched one of the debates where it's like the moderator was like, you are all kind of hypocrites on this, and this is why you're hypocrites. Do you care to respond to it? And they all kind of like had like wishy-washy answer. Jack Ciattarelli's like, well, we should give illegal immigrants driver's license because we want to know who they are. And it's like, well, that's kind of like, are you going to put a little stamp on the driver's license? Like, how is that going to work?
Towards the end of it, they really played against that one pretty hard. For Ciattarelli.
I want to jump back to the Democrats and get back to my point in terms of why they should be embarrassed, because like Sherrill, we have talked about, she's a bad candidate. And the one thing that, like, watching the debates and watching some of the interviews she does, even mild pushback, she does not respond well to that. She kind of
closes up on it.
She doesn't have, like, she can't respond on her toes. Like, she's got no impulse to actually give you, like, any sort of answers, which should be concerning for Democrats in, like, the general election, because while Jack Ciattarelli is he's not like the ideal candidate.
No, he's not.
He can still think of lines, or at least have rehearsed lines for that moment.
That's why I think this could make this interesting, because Mikie Sherrill there's like nothing really there. She's not good at like really asserting her plans. If any.
Yeah, that's the real thing about her. It's like I I have tried my best to listen to interviews with her. I've gone onto her website to look at where she stands on the topics.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I think that's kind of like why she was able to not only win this primary, but win it so convincingly, because she just didn't dig a hole for herself. If you're somebody like Gottheimer or Sweeney, you already dug your hole. Because for the most part, a registered Democrat will see you and think, that's kind of a Republican. And then if you're Ras Baraka or Steve Fulop, they're going to look at you and you're like, you're unelectable because you're too progressive. Mikie Sherrill is able to walk that line.
That's where I think she got in, because she didn't really do anything to upset anything.
Yeah. And that's a crucial part in terms of like, because we're still walking the waters here in terms of like I know a lot of crazy stuff has been going on in the national and international circuits, and we won't talk about it because I don't want to.
No. Same.
But in terms of the state of New Jersey, you really have to be like, well, how will an actual general election go? And if you're the Democrats, like, they still don't know whether you got to go centrist or go like far left. And with Mikie Sherrill, she seems to be just like, she is like a nice little piece of clay they can mold in either direction.
She is like just trying to play the game of like trying to create the least amount of wake possible.
And that's why I think Fulop, because Fulop came in second overall. And Fulop and Ras Baraka really missed the mark in terms of trying to hit her in terms of like the debates. Like really go after, like, do you want
what do you actually stand for?
What do you stand for? Why are you actually here? Like this, that, and the other thing. Like they did these passive aggressive things like, oh yeah, you should spend more time in New Jersey if you love it so much or something like that. But that is not really going to land.
No.
So
I truly feel like she got what she got to the point where she got because she hasn't made any fucking waves.
And also at the same time, too, one of the last times we talked about this, we talked about the county conventions.
Yes.
She won most of them.
Yes.
And for a good chunk of them, too, you don't really need to, like, win any votes. You just need to curry favor. To me, she's the typical crony Democrat.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I will say this: if you are listening and you're a Democrat and you're like, well, that's bullshit. Like, so is Ciattarelli.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Like, listen, it's all fucked.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong, but like, she has not presented anything. I feel like her game plan was to literally, at least to get to this level, to not make waves.
Yeah.
To not make waves. To try to get the more laissez-faire Democrats.
Yeah.
You got your Ras and you got your Fulop on the more extreme ends of these things. And like, that's a little, this is New Jersey. Let's never forget that this is New Jersey. People are reticent to get into like the far sides of things.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think that's why she was kind of able to write. Now, what this means when we get closer to the actual election, we'll see.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's how I feel like she got in.
I also think, too...
And people are scared of fucking Newark and all that shit like that.
Another embarrassing thing that some of the candidates, not all of them, I think it was more Fulop than Ras Baraka, because I think Ras Baraka, because the election structure changed, the primary structure changed, a lot of them were like, well, the county conventions don't matter anymore, so I won't do that. They didn't really take into account how county parties can actually curry favor and have some, ground force support for you in terms of like winning that county or winning that area. So a guy like Steve Fulop, who did not really participate in that.
That is fair.
That's probably why he lost by amount that he did.
I'd say that's fair.
Another key point to it too is, so Fulop, I think he's declared his candidacy first, and then Ras Baraka came in, they ate themselves.
They kind of did.
If those, I was even complaining about this. I'm not a Democrat, so I don't know why I would complain about it. But like, some of those guys needed to drop out.
Yeah.
Like the fact that it was a 6-person race. There was a few of like Steve Sweeney. I know he won the county endorsements and all that stuff in South Jersey.
Yeah.
He had no pathway to victory. He was polling last in almost every single poll. And what we learned from this race in particular is that the polls were right.
Yeah.
When you take out Donald Trump from the race, the polls tend to be right, except for the 2022 midterms. But we're not going to count them.
We're not going to talk about that. Yeah. No, it's incredibly interesting because, like, as I said numerous times, Sweeney was the one that was the most in my face, at least through print media, since before the presidential election, he was throwing a lot of money into print media advertising. The first one, continuous. And then there's no one even that was in second place to that.
Yeah.
He was the only one advertising for the whole year. From the presidential election time, straight through into everybody else. 8 months later.
The issue became, too, like Mikie Sherrill, like, to her credit, she did the campaign advertisement right. She didn't bombard you at the very beginning because at least
zero footprint in print media in at least Ocean County where I deliver.
She was able to she skipped like the early part and in the at the end bombardment of just like I was seeing the YouTube ads.
Oh,
so I assume they were all over like TV.
They were.
And I think that
different playbooks on how you
she was able. I don't know if she was the darling from the beginning of the Democrat Party. It makes sense to me because she was leading in every single poll from the beginning.
It does.
So I want to transition from that point to another point, and which is we now know who the two candidates are. And my opinion on this, if you're Jack Ciattarelli, you have to be very excited because Mikie Sherrill, as we already discussed, isn't quick on her feet, doesn't have any real principles to speak of. I find it very hard to believe that anyone outside of just vote blue no matter who will be super interested in like representing her and freaking going door to door and doing this, that, and the other thing. Now, I say this knowing the same exact thing about Jack Ciattarelli, but Jack Ciattarelli has the name recognition.
He does.
He almost beat Phil Murphy because he lost by like 3 points.
3 points.
In 2021.
Yes.
So he's already like, if Phil Murphy didn't have the advantage of the incumbency, very likely would have won that race. And also, I will say this. You and I both don't like Phil Murphy. We make fun of him on the flagship podcast.
At any given time, please.
He is a much better politician than Mikie Sherrill. He can speak.
He is.
He thinks on his feet.
I hate to say it, but he is.
He might give you a dumbass answer, but you're going to be like, all right, I didn't realize that the U.S. Constitution was above a governor's pay grade, but okay, at least he thought of something. Mikie Sherrill, I don't even know if she could think of something on the fly if she was getting pressed over something like that.
I hate to call it, we're a little ways off, and like there's a lot to be seen. But like there is a real chance here.
Yeah, and that was another point that I wanted to make because since there is a big chance here, if Jack Ciattarelli does not win, he will go down as the biggest failure, biggest choke artist in New Jersey GOP history. He lost the GOP primary by a hefty amount to Kim Guadagno.
Yes.
He lost the first governor in 40 years in New Jersey, first Republican candidate to give a Democrat governor 2 terms. And then this one, I know there's an over 800,000 registered voter advantage for Democrats. But even with that, I would still like, he's not a favorite, but he's like that.
No, but there's definitely contention.
It's like, it's that type of like, if you use a sports reference, like it's that underdog. You're like, underdog's going to win this game. I don't even know why the underdog isn't the favorite in this one. And like the line is super close.
It is. It truly is. It absolutely is. I would absolutely, like, and I mean this fully. I think Ciattarelli, as long as he doesn't fuck it up, has got a very good chance.
Well, that's also the other thing. Again, won't go too much into international and national politics. That can affect him too.
It could. It absolutely could. It absolutely could.
So that'll be very.
What is she?
Yeah, that's the problem. Now you can, again, if you're a Democrat and you're listening to us and you're like, so is Ciattarelli. Ciattarelli has no real positions. He was on again. He's on again, off again in terms of liking Trump.
Sure, absolutely.
The issue is, and we can attack either one of these as we get. We'll probably take a pause on these for a little bit because there's not much to do.
We'll revisit closer.
But for Ciattarelli, he's already, as we already said, he's a known quantity, a known brand in the state of New Jersey. He already had he lost by less than 100,000 votes to Phil Murphy.
Yeah.
So it's not necessarily that he needs to gain 100,000 votes for this race. He just needs to kind of break even, which I would argue because it's not in that COVID time. He's probably not going to see the voter turnout that he had.
No, absolutely not. And there's a lot of things because like Murphy really kind of like screwed the pooch. particularly like with a lot of things set in place and made us a lot worse off.
Yeah.
And that can hurt the party itself. And so that's going to be a big player in this thing, I think, too, because she is such milquetoast.
Because I remember during one of the first Democrat debates, they were saying, what would you grade Phil Murphy? Now, you and I would give Phil Murphy an F.
Oh, absolutely. There's not a question.
A Republican would give Phil Murphy an F.
Yeah.
They were giving him B's and C's.
Which is insane.
Insane.
Yeah.
It's like us giving like Chris Christie anything above an F.
Right.
Like that's like ridiculous. You don't even live in like reality if you're giving this governor anything like, all right, maybe a D for Christie and Murphy if you're being generous.
Oh, okay, all right, sure.
But
fine.
Anything above that, you are not in touch with the own problems in your own party and your own party's politicians.
Murphy's grand plans that have fallen apart and have literally screwed everybody in New Jersey.
Yeah.
Because they are irrecoverable. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. It's just it's hurt. Like it's hurt everyone.
Yeah, and
incredible. And it's, as I said, irrecoverable.
So that will be kind of like the very interesting dynamic to this race post the primary. Is that will the national GOP screw over the New Jersey GOP with its actions?
Yeah.
But will the Democrat, the national Democrat, or even just the Democrats' own history within this state have more influence on terms of just like, like, because the race will, for the most part, since there is that big gap, it will be largely based on independence.
It will.
Because there are a good chunk of independent voters in New Jersey.
There are.
So it'll just be like, is Trump doing something crazy right now? Well, Phil Murphy was a kind of a piece of shit. Yeah. So, like, do I vote against that?
It is kind of a weird metric you got to put together. Because, right now, it's real weird.
Yeah.
We'll see what it is when we get closer.
Yeah.
Who knows? You can't call it right now.
Oh, yeah, because we're just, as we record this, we're in, like, the beginning of summer.
Yes.
We have all the way until November for all of this to play out.
Right.
There could be a number of things that happen, but also at the same time, for the New Jersey gubernatorial election, that's not going to make headlines.
No.
That's not something that's like people are going to be like, oh, yeah, I'm super. People are going to be voting based on things that are happening nationally.
Yes. Yeah.
Or if there's a huge problem in the state again, like if there's there's not going to be another strike, but something akin to
something akin to that,
the engineer strike, that could force another situation where maybe more people look at Ciattarelli.
Right.
So there will be debates on this. I'll have to look up when they're actually happening. But I really do think this is a golden opportunity for the New Jersey GOP and Jack Ciattarelli.
There's a path.
Yeah,
it's a legitimate path.
Yeah, because you could argue he can legitimately win Passaic and Bergen with Mikie Sherrill. It's just she's going to have to do she doesn't have to do a tremendous amount of work. She's just going to make sure that 800,000
some work.
Yeah, she's got to have that. Make sure that 800,000 registered Democrat voter. I don't know how many of them are active voters.
Yeah, that's a very good question, but still, yeah.
But it's not like Trump and the Republicans on the national scale are doing Ciattarelli any favors.
No, they're not particularly doing him any favors.
So I'm very curious about this. I do want to so this was with 50% left in the poll.
Yes.
I will jump back real quick to Spadea. The amount that he was losing by. So it was Mercer because I'm looking at this. I have the information on my phone, but I won't bother pulling it up.
No.
But it was like a 10-point deficit, and that was the closest his margin was.
Yes.
And then in Hunterdon, it was 14.
Yeah.
And then it was Ocean County, he lost by 33 percentage points.
Yeah.
That was supposed, if you're Bill Spadea you're the Trump guy, Ocean County is the Trump county.
It is.
And you got blown out. The fuck
Absolutely blown out.
I'm sorry, but you were just not a legitimate candidate.
No.
And I can make fun of him all I want for just saying this, that, and the other thing in terms of his candidacy.
But I said, he hasn't particularly done himself a lot of favors.
Yeah.
But I was kind of surprised about how wide that gap was.
Yeah.
Particularly in Ocean County.
I was expecting...
And I know a lot of fringe, like those far right people. Like,
Yeah.
I have friends across the whole spectrum. And a lot of those people were Spadea people.
Mm-hmm.
Clearly didn't work out for the county.
Another point I want to make before we kind of like sign off on this is that I think the reason why you should be embarrassed if you're a Ras Baraka and a Steve Fulop or even a Bill Spadea is because if you go on to like the comment section of the debates or just like any interview that was on like the New Jersey Globe or New Jersey Spotlight or anything like that, it was filled with people that were like, Ras is my guy. Steve Fulop is my guy. Right. To a degree, Bill Spadea. Spadea. And you had Dick for turnout. Right. So it's...
Well, that's the thing. The turnout is ultimately I mean, I shouldn't be surprised, but it does surprise me because they're so... Well, it's the loud minorities.
Yeah. The people that are leaving the comments. Like, that's not a representation.
It's not. It's truly not.
But that was also like... I was a little mistaken when we were talking initially when I was like, is the temperature here that South Jersey is cold on Mikie Sherrill? Now, maybe that translate over to the general, but not so much. She won some South Jersey counties.
I was surprised.
Yeah, so I was surprised by that. But like also at the same time, I was really surprised how dominant she was in a lot of those counties. Like they weren't particularly close. She won a lot of the counties in terms of like 10 points, 30 points in some. She just cleaned everyone's clock.
I think particularly with the southern counties that she won is just because like she's optically, by being practically nothing, a safer pick than say someone like Ras or who seems more aggressive, more...
Yeah, I agree. I agree with you. Ras was not the fact that he brought it up in the last debate kind of made him seem insecure. Yeah. Because like if you're saying like, oh, well, let's talk about electability and this, that, and the other thing, I'm like, are you saying that you think you're unelectable? Like,
right. It's not great.
It's not a great look. Yeah. So I think for the most part, as I said before, the progressives ate themselves. Yeah. And I think if Steve Sweeney... I don't know who Sean Spiller's real base was.
I don't know.
He did a lot better than I thought for a guy that wasn't really in the race to really speak of in the last couple, last month or so.
Well, definitely the ass end of it, definitely not.
But I think that if Gottheimer and Sweeney and Spiller kind of withdrew and rallied around at least one of them, you made it a 3-person race. Sherrill.
I think that would have been much wiser.
It would have been closer too, because if you go now. Let's just say, for example, like just because you are like Gottheimer and Sweeney might be closer, like politically in terms of their ideology, they just seem to be swamp creatures. Doesn't mean that if you were planning on voting for Gottheimer, that you would switch over to Sweeney. You might just switch back over to Sherrill, and her lead might have been even bigger. Yeah. So I don't know. I don't know about that.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like I did look at the breakdown across counties when it happened. We're a little beyond that now. But like some surprises, some not so much. It's just New Jersey being such a varied state, county to county, and like North Jersey Democrats are kind of different than South Jersey Democrats. It's like urban and
rural, suburban kind of areas, because we very much, in terms of this state, we have an urban area. You even have more of a suburban, rural area in North Jersey, in Warren. And
especially. Yeah. It's New Jersey is such a small yet complex state with incredibly compact urban areas, and then drive a half hour and be just passing farmland.
Yeah. And so, it's the difference in terms of not even values, just like, where are all these people think? Like, I think that, like, why Gottheimer connected in Bergen is because of the thing that he hammered down in taxes.
Yes.
And that's, like, if you're in Bergen, you're very close to New York City, very close to New York State, and you're like, yeah, I would like my taxes to be, like, a little bit friggin' lower. So... It's interesting that didn't have more pull elsewhere, because it's not like it's a universal. It's not a universal thing. Not.
But like, as much as you think it might be. Yeah.
But other people, like, believe me, up until like the last few moments, I was about to hammer Ras a little bit more. But since he won effectively his county and union, at least he has something to his name. But if you are, and again, I'm repeating myself, but if you're Steve Fulop and if you're Ras Baraka, you should have done a lot better.
Yeah.
Because not for nothing, Fulop and Ras Baraka had things to say.
Yeah.
They had policies. They had arguments with people on the debate stage about those policies.
I think they're both kind of inherently flawed in their ways, but at least they had something to stand on.
Yeah. And Mikie Sherrill, for the most part, nothing really. So I don't know. And this will be interesting because now it's going to be like that very stereotypical South Park-esque turd sandwich versus giant douche type of race where it's like two people that are just trying not to screw up.
It's also so like to that point when you have a candidate for a party that kind of just is there, you can face a lot of non-turnout for voting.
Yeah. Especially primaries because New Jersey is a closed primary.
Right.
So we're never going to see like a great turnout. So finally was able to get the data pulled up. So the turnout for the Democrats, despite the fact that it's still only 93% estimated reporting, 835,000 voters, which is not bad for a primary.
Not terrible for a primary.
And then for the Republicans, I think it's almost about half, 464,359.
Yeah.
And so like this, now I'm looking at the updated data. Jack Ciattarelli lost by practically 40 in Ocean County. That's
holy cow.
Yeah, that is ridiculous.
Holy cow, man.
All right, so he lost by 8 in Mercer.
Okay. All right.
But like it's still, that was his closest. He lost by 8 percentage points.
Right.
That was the closest race in terms of if you break it down by county.
Yeah.
And
wow,
it was an absolute Michael Jordan dunking in the guy's face and teabagging him at the same time.
Yeah, full drag.
All right, so I was mistaken. Sean Spiller didn't. Sean Spiller only won Cumberland.
Okay.
Sweeney only won Salem and Gloucester.
Oh, interesting.
And Mikie Sherrill, and so it's actually quicker just to say who won the different counties. I was correct. Gottheimer won Bergen.
Okay.
And Baraka won Essex and Union.
Yeah.
Everything else went to Mikie Sherrill. Yeah. And it was, it's like, all right, Atlantic was kind of close. It was within 5 percentage points. Against Steve Sweeney. But if you're Steve Sweeney, you came in third in Cape May.
Right.
You lost to Sean Spiller in Cumberland. Like, not for nothing, you punched below what you were capable of. You should have dominated South Jersey. Yeah. So a lot of these guys, they have to go back and they got to rethink not only their like Ras, and I think Fulop might have more something of a political career after this.
And they will. I think absolutely they will. So whatever the end that is.
Sweeney, you might want to consider retiring because you lost in your own counties effectively because South Jersey is supposed to be your thing. And before this, you lost to a trucker.
Right.
So like I think you're just kind of it's over for you.
I agree with that. No, I absolutely think Ras has something.
I don't know.
I just don't know what that ends up being.
I don't know if he can win general elections, especially
I think he has a locality thing. I don't think he can win a general election in any way, shape, or form.
Yeah, he works well as a mayor in an urban area because he can speak to that population and the socioeconomic issues.
He's good at that.
But
absolutely.
If you're trying to win over people that live in suburbs and rural areas,
tough pill, man.
Yeah, it's people are not going to want to sign up to have a Newark sort of plan for their South Jersey
county. Because the
county.
people living outside of that, the Democrats living outside of it, they don't want that.
Yeah, not even the Democrats.
No.
And they showed that sort of in spades with the results here because let me punch up some of this. Ocean County, Ras Baraka was he last No, he was 5th.
Okay, but still.
But that's not good. He had 8% in Ocean County.
Yeah.
He had 17%, and he was 4th in Atlantic County. 16% third in Burlington. He should do better in Camden just because of the city of Camden.
Right.
12%, 4th. And then even then, too, like there were other counties that I was like, he should be performing better than that.
Yeah.
10% in Morris. 62% in Morris for Mikie Sherrill. That is a 50% difference between her and Steve Fulop, who had 12.
I didn't know it was that wide. It's not necessarily a massive, but that's a wide margin.
It's a wide margin, especially where, like, if Ras Baraka were to have any kind of net in New Jersey to kind of like, I'm in contention for this race, it would be Bergen, which he lost to Gottheimer. He wasn't even really competitive in that. Right. 16%, Gottheimer at 37%. And he was 4th in Bergen, so we really didn't connect with there. No. But these are all counties that are close to Essex, where he's supposed to have that viability. Yeah. He lost by 5 to Mikie Sherrill and Passaic, which is at least a halfway decent showing.
Decent.
Again, the Morris thing where he got blown out.
Yep.
Sussex at 10%, and he was 5th. And Essex, it's right. Well, it's not right there.
No, but I mean, come on.
And then
it's very surprising.
He lost Somerset, which is right next to the counties that he won. He was in 2nd, 23%, but versus 41%. That's why my overall thesis.
There's a translation thing here, man. It just doesn't carry.
Yeah. Also, again, repeating myself as we wind this down, some of these guys needed to drop out.
Yeah. Well, they don't do themselves any favors. They muddied the waters too much.
Yeah.
And I fully believe that it's too many, just too many pieces on the board.
There were too many. There was one too many progressives in that. Ras or Steve Fulop had a puncher's chance if the other one dropped out. But the problem was that they were both like 2nd and 3rd in the polling, and then the other guys who were low in the polling for the most part, freaking Spiller, Gottheimer, and Sweeney.
Yep.
They all should have dropped out.
Yep.
And then they could have at least maybe used some of their endorsement power to like kind of make this a race. But who's to say they even don't maybe they just endorse Mikie Sherrill.
Right. So, and that's the thing. Like, who actually knows? It would be interesting to have seen, but I think they should have at a point realized for the better for what they're trying to achieve as supposedly a unified front. But no, I think they just, as it often goes, screws the pooch. Too many chefs in the kitchen.
Yeah. All right, Justin, I think we had a good conversation about this. We'll
revisit it when we get closer to...
we'll take a little break. Politics are actively driving us crazy right now.
Yeah.
But once we get a little closer, I think maybe somewhere around the time of the first debate, we'll circle back to the gubernatorial election. But yeah, right now, as it stands, I like Jack Ciattarelli's chances.
Yeah.
Mikie Sherrill, she's got the advantage in terms of voters, but we'll see if she can activate that.
I'm interested to see if she has anything to offer.
Yeah.
Because so far, I haven't seen much of anything.
Because she hasn't made the point to make the point of what she does offer. So, yeah, with all that, we'll see you close to debate time.
We all can't wait.
Yeah.
Woo! Cheers.